we going?
Swimming!
Some bad hat, Harry.
It's a great white.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
1,100 men went into the water.
You son of a...
Jaws 2, Halloween 2, Clue, Santa Claus a movie, practically my childhood. And so I'm really pleased and privileged to say that the Daily Jaws has the opportunity to speak to one of the stars of all of those films, Mr. Jeffrey Kramer. Hi, Jeffrey. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Dean?
Yeah,
I'm happy to be here, and I'm honored to be here because I'm a big fan of the Daily Jaws, and I look at it every single day.
Wow.
And it actually, I get such joy out of it. The idea that we're talking 45 years later, people are loving and honoring this enormous cultural icon is, and how blessed am I to be a part of it. It's just stunning, and I'm grateful, and I'm happy to be here with you.
Brilliant. Well, talking of obviously Jaws fans and things, I know that on the 22nd of August, you've got a digital live event taking place. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's my Virgin Digital Jaws experience. I have never done anything like this. I don't do many of the cons in the old days, but I do enjoy them. And you can't do them anymore. And Dominic Mancini, who I think is just a terrific human being and very insightful for the future of digital cons, in a way, set it up. And my kids are going to try to help me, although only one is here. Two live in the UK with you. And it's the first time I've ever done these meet and greets, and I love doing these meet and greets, but I've never done them digitally. And we have a chance to talk to people and do shout outs and other things. And it's August 22nd. And I can do a Q&A on FulEmpirePromotions.com on their sites on both Facebook and Instagram. And then at 5, we begin the individual sessions for whoever wants what and what time. And I'm kind of really excited. I mean, you know, the idea is that if you're going to do this, you have to really want to do this. And it's kind of very cool.
So it's great, obviously, that so anyone from around the world will be able to
and anybody, as far as I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine how you do this, but it is what it is.
That's great. Well, I've just got a few questions for you about Jaws and your career. So, Jaws was your first film. So, how did the role come about?
Well, it's so interesting. I was a New York actor. I'd done a couple days on another little film that I have blocked. I can't even remember the name of it. But I read in the Vineyard Gazette, in the local paper, that they were going to make a movie on Martha's Vineyard. And I called my agent in New York, and he set up an interview with Stephen. And I flew in with another guy who I'd known. He was going to have an interview. And I went in and I met Stephen. And this is true story because it's never happened to me since. But I walked out of that meeting and I said to this guy, I said, you know, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this role. 10 days later, I was in Virginia doing a commercial, and the call came. And I've never, ever walked away from an audition thinking, oh, God, yes, this is going to happen, ever. And it was very cool. And the first day of principal photography was the day of finding the arm on the beach. I was so nervous I could have really thrown up, for sure.
I mean, that's amazing that, you know, obviously it's kind of like one of the first scenes in the film, but obviously it was kind of like the first day of shooting and your first scene as well. Any other memories from that? Did it take long?
I made great friends. You know, Dreyfus is the godfather to my youngest son, and Joe Alves and Jeannot Swark are dear, dear friends, and I love David Brown particularly. He was just a consummate gentleman. And Verna Fields, they used to call her the mother cutter because she mothered all of us. And I loved her family and her son Rick. And just, it was what an experience. And you know, who knew that it was going to turn out like it did? I mean, it was like a creative, perfect storm. Everything just worked. And you know what really helped us was that the shark didn't work. So you had to rely on character. Nowadays, they want bigger and faster and do more acrobatics. But when you rely on character, it's everything. I mean, I make TV series, and it's always about character, because it doesn't matter what the character does. You kind of know what they're going to do. You go back every week because you love watching them do it.
Do you think that's part of the longevity of Jaws? Because it is, you know, people say it's a film about a shark, but actually it's not. It is about the characters, isn't it?
Well, and it's also, you know, it's so interesting because in the pandemic, it's about greed and politics and which comes first, personal safety or economics. It's uncannily resonant today. It's just unbelievable. And the one other guy who I just loved and I didn't mention was Murray Hamilton. He was the best. He used to keep a bottle of gin in my boot if we shared a dressing room.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, Murray's great, definitely. I mean, I think the whole cast are amazing. I think the great thing with Jaws is whether someone's got one line or whether they're in the whole movie. Sort of like people just latch onto them, and everyone shines in that film. It's like almost. It's like lightning in a bottle, isn't it? You couldn't.
You bet.
With the shot, you couldn't plan it.
It was so well cast. And Jaws 2, a lot of those kids are still some of my dearest friends. Gary Springer, one of my dearest friends in the world.
So, obviously, we can't talk about Deputy Hendricks without talking about Chief Brody. So, obviously, a lot of your scenes were with Brody. What was it like working with Roy Scheider?
There were two Roys, in a sense. Jaws 1, he was really a nice guy. And I ran a theater on Martha's Vineyard, a summer theater that I produced and played all the best young men's roles in. And it was lovely. And he actually came one night, and he was a lovely man. And Jaws 2, he was just, I think he just didn't want to do it. I think he was kind of forced to do it. And he was tougher, and he'd rewrite scenes sometimes, and wouldn't be in them. And, you know of the famous incident where he and Jeannot were rolling on the ground, choking each other. And he just he didn't really want to be there, didn't really want to do it. And by the way, it is in that movie where he got so dark sitting out in his little G-string that he had to be color corrected in the final mix.
Right. I mean, also, I think, although you say that about Scheider and Jaws 2, I don't think it's evident on screen, certainly. And I think some of the loveliest moments in the sequel, certainly between yourself, Lorraine Gary, and Scheider after he's just got the sack. So when you go and see him in his house, that's a brilliant scene. I just watched it again the other day, and
I liked it. He was, and you know, I'd seen him afterwards also, and at different things in California, and he was always very sweet and pleasant and nice. Whoops! There goes the light. This thing just fell.
And so, as you mentioned, both Dreyfus is sort of godfather to one of your children, and you were very close to Murray Hamilton. So did you hang around with them quite a bit on the film?
Well, Richard, I don't see as much. He doesn't live in town. I did see Joe Alves often. We saw each other for years and years. And then, you end up having families and it takes you away from that. But I got married at Jono Swark's house, and we made a great movie over there. Well, we made a movie over there called Santa Claus the Movie.
Yeah.
With Dudley Moore. And Jono, I
Yeah.
got married at his house. He's one of my dearest friends. He's now living in France and a little bit in England, but he's retired. And just a fabulous filmmaker with a great resume of pictures he made.
Yeah, I think he did. Was it Somewhere in Time? And
Oh yeah, Enigma. He did Supergirl.
Yeah.
And I brought him into David E. Kelly, and he did many episodes for us in The Practice and Ally McBeal. And I know he did many Grey's Anatomies. And what a gentleman, and what a film buff. Did you ever see a movie called A Little Romance? I've not
seen that one.
Oh, it's a fabulous. It's Olivier, and it was what's her name? It's her first film. She was the star of the Alan Parker film when the kids sing. Oh, what's her name? I can't.
Oh, no, not Commitments. You mean Bugsy Malone?
Yeah, Bugsy Malone.
Right.
And it's such a lovely little movie, and the character of the little French boy in it reminds me so much of Jeannot. He's a kid who loved movies. He's looking at you, kid. He was just fabulous.
I will check that out. So, did you ever think that people would be talking about Jaws after 45 years?
Not ever. The idea that I would walk in a room and someone said, can I have your autograph? Or would even pay me for an autograph was stunning. And I had no idea how popular and how resonant and affecting this was for generations. Some people would come into these cons and they'd have 4-year-olds and they'd say, well, he's seen it a few times. And I thought, oh my God, I should call social services on you. This is too young. But it is, and it's passed down. It's almost hereditary, generation to generation. Kids remember that their father took them to it or whatever. And it was, you talk about your childhood. I was in some of the babysitter pictures, like Clue. Your parents would probably go out, leave it on because they knew there was no harm that was going to come to you from that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so I know we talked about whether people will be talking about it in 45 years' time, but what do you think is that lasting appeal?
I think it is, as we talked about before, I think it's uncannily resonant for today's situation, particularly with the pandemic and everything else. And also, there is that deep primordial fear of the primordial ooze, in a way, the ocean, the depths, the unknown. And we all have that fear. It's such a subconscious fear, and it really touched it because it made it feel like it could happen to any of us. And that, I think, is why this movie really, really works. And Stephen was still Stephen then, I mean, he was a baby. I'll tell you a funny story. There was a year where we won Best Producers of the Year award from the Producers Guild for The Practice. It was a legal series with Dylan McDermott, and Stephen was presenting. And David Kelly can't be there, so I'm going to accept. And I think, oh my God, this is a dream come true. And there's 600-700 people there. It's many, many years ago. And Stephen says, as he's presenting this, he goes, oh, Jerry, I'm so proud of you. And I think, oh my God, you wait your whole life. And he goes, Jerry? And what are you going to do? You can't say, no, it's Jeffrey. It's Jeffrey. You just go, oh, okay, thank you. And
Jerry from now.
It kind of makes it worth it that you can tell it on the Daily Jaws or
Yeah, yeah,
something. It's kind of fun.
definitely. And obviously, it's, we mentioned earlier that there's lots of Jaws fans out there at conventions, and you get to see quite a lot of Jaws tattoos and Quint
Oh
tattoos.
yeah,
Have you ever seen a Deputy Hendricks tattoo?
never. But
That's
I
what I've
tell you,
I've not got one. Don't worry.
I have friends on the vineyard who told me that there's this new kind of game, which I thought was, I couldn't imagine it, that jumping off the Jaws bridge, if you say, Hendricks, let Paulie do the printing, boom, you got to do it before you hit the water. And you have to elongate the Hendricks, evidently.
Oh, I'll have to try that if I'm lucky enough to visit. And talking of the vineyard, is that where you first saw Jaws? Was there a cast screening and things, or when did you first get to see it?
No, I was based in New York, so I'd first seen it in New York, and then when I saw what was going on in California, and eventually when I went out there, I knew a guy who was an usher in a theater who'd let us in every night. We wanted to go in just to watch the moment when Ben Gardner's head comes out of the boat, because the entire audience rears back. It was unbelievable, and it was the same every single night. And Stephen, who's so brilliant, said we need another scare, and that was done in Verna Field swimming pool.
Yeah, I think they put milk in it, didn't they? Powdered milk or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I hope he paid for it to be cleaned out.
Yeah.
And so, just moving on to Jaws 2 a little bit. Obviously, the other thing within that, you also got to be the chief of police. So that was
it's interesting
quite
that
nice.
I ended up in Jaws 2 because I was hired to do it. I showed up, and it was a different director, John Hancock, and he had cut the part in two. And there was another actor, I think it was Marshall Efron, nice man, but he got all the good lines, and I thought, I don't want to do this. This is not what I really wanted to do. And I was young and ambitious, and this is when I thought acting, this was love. I was wrong, by the way. I got out of it, thank God. But so I left, and then he got fired. Jeannot Swart came in and said, what happened to the guy who was the original? And he brought me back. And then it was just, I loved doing it. It was really long, 9 months on location. And the joke always was that if any of us ever went to prison, you got 6 months off of any jail term just for doing Jaws 2.
But no, it was genuinely nice to see more of you in Jaws 2. I think, obviously, various points when we were little watching it, we were worried that Hendricks was kind of, because you were that lovely character that no one had a bad word to say about, that you might get got by the shark at one point. Certainly when
I
you
know
were
he's kind of everyman.
Yeah,
in that sense.
And do you think that's part of the appeal of Hendricks? Because everybody loves Hendricks, don't they?
Well, they do, and because he was all of us. He was the observer, and who really didn't have any power, couldn't do anything, and he was kind of fun. He was all of us, nervous and tense and didn't know what to do. And hey, what's the matter with my printing? It's kind of all of that.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a dollar for every time someone had kind of quoted that at you, I'm sure you'd have retired a long time ago, no doubt.
Oh, it's so funny, for sure. But it's interesting because I work in television and Hollywood, and a lot of people, certainly I have, I don't look the same. So people will go, oh, when they find out, they go, you were in Jaws? It's for a generation, the seminal film of adventure, thrill, summer blockbuster. It's the first one. And, in many ways, and I know it may sound ageist of me, but during the 70s, they were some of the best movies ever made, I think.
You're talking, but your voice
Sorry
is very.
about this. This is
Fine, it's fine. Your voice is very distinctive, though. So that's kind of something that kind of, even if people didn't recognise you straight away in Clue, for example, when you kind of knock at the door, as soon as you open your mouth, we know.
Oh, you're very kind.
We know it's
I
you.
used to do occasional voiceovers, so I was the voice of Metamucil laxative. And then, but the best one that I ever did was Dr. Pepper. Do you ever remember, Harry, this is your mouth talking, Harry?
I don't know if we got that one in the UK.
No,
but,
it was fun. It was
talking
fun.
talking of voices, am I right in saying that you also did some looping on Jaws 3D?
Jaws 3D, I did some looping. Joe Alves is my dear, dear friend, and I adore him. And I think he's such a big, big talent. He's such a good soul, and he's so artistic. And he really, for all the stories of how he ended up on Martha's Vineyard, and he's an important person in my life ever since.
I presume you didn't loop one of the dolphins, Cindy or Sandy. I presume you were just looping people in the background.
It's more like crowd voices.
Yeah. But that's great. I didn't realise that. So technically, you've appeared in three Jaws films.
Did you ever see a movie that Joe Dante made called Hollywood Boulevard?
Yes.
Half of it's footage from old Corman movies that they put together, because he and Alan Arkus used to cut trailers, and they put together Hollywood Boulevard. And as I'm in the credits, as I walk down Hollywood Boulevard, the girl walks down Hollywood Boulevard, there's a picture of Jaws, and they put my credit on there. It was nice.
Not sweet joke there. Yeah, definitely. So if you'd been asked, or I don't know if you were asked, would you have been open to returning to Amity Island for Jaws of Revenge?
I don't know. It depended on what the part, who's going to do it, and whatever. By then, I was able to be a little bit picky.
Yeah.
When you're young, you just take all that stuff and just go do it. But I think I was blessed and lucky to stop it too.
Sure. Obviously, Scheider didn't do 4, so they kind of killed him off screen.
Yeah,
I think they had approached Rory Hamilton, from what I read, but unfortunately he passed away before he was able to do that. But I think the 11,
I love
12...
Lorraine Gary. I would have done it for her. She's just a light of life. She is a fantastic human being. And, if you ever were here, I'll tell you a funny story. Her husband, Sid Sheinberg, was the head of Universal Studios. And I'm there in my uniform and Jaws 2 and talking to Sid and Lorraine. And I think, oh, it's so exciting. And then a woman comes up who I didn't know, and she said, "Excuse me, sir." And I think, oh my God, she going to recognize me? And she said, "Are you in a bowling league in town?" And Lorraine said, I've never heard him laugh out loud like that, but he roared, and it was so funny, and we all laughed about it. It was one of the great memories for me.
Excellent. I think the 12-year-old me was disappointed that you weren't chief of police in Jaws of Revenge anyway, even if it was just
I like
those
that.
initial.
So
those
were you
initial Amity
obsessed with
scenes,
Jaws since you were 12?
Yeah, I think I have been pretty much. Yeah, that's when I first bought it on VHS. That was my first ever film I bought on VHS. Yeah, which I've still got.
At least it wasn't Betamax, huh?
No. Although Betamax copies of Jaws go for quite a bit of money these days.
They do.
Yeah. People just love buying anything with Jaws on still. Obviously, you were also in Halloween 2, and that had quite a lot of links with the Jaws series. Dick Warlock, who was sort of one of the stunt people in Jaws. He played the shape, didn't he? We had the future Mike Brody from Jaws of Revenge with Lance Guest.
Yeah.
Obviously yourself, and you even shared some scenes with the great Donald Pleasance, who I know he was really
Nice
good friends
man.
with Robert Shaw as well,
Yeah.
and they performed a lot on stage
And
with him.
Shaw
So
was an interesting guy. He was never around a lot. We'd talk, and he
yeah,
was a big, he wasn't a huge man, but he had a big presence, and he had that voice that was just terrific. But I grew up knowing the man who it was all based on Craig Kingsbury,
right.
who was really, my mother would tell us stories that he used to walk barefoot in the snow in the winter.
Of course, he was, of course, Ben Gardner, wasn't he? So it was
Yeah.
it was nice that he was kind of featured in there. So obviously, with Jaws and Halloween too, you're part of two big, huge franchises. And saying that the love for those just seems to keep on going, doesn't it? So it's amazing
Stunning.
that
Yeah.
you know. And I guess your parts in it are sort of not huge, but you make such an impact. But people don't seem to forget that, and people just can't get enough of anyone who's been in them, whether they're in it for like 5 seconds or for like the whole duration of the
Well,
film. But I think,
sometimes less is more,
yeah, yeah.
you know?
And then after acting, you decided to go sort of behind the scenes. And am I right in saying that it was Richard Dreyfuss who kind of pushed you to go
Well,
for a development job at Fox?
yeah, it was. My wife had set it up. I got offered to go in and see about this job at Fox through someone who I vaguely knew, and I went in and I met Barry Diller and I met John Dolgen, and it was one of those, and Harris Kettleman, and then my wife said Richard to come up over to the house, and he said, because I was not sure that I wanted to be a suit. I didn't know that I wanted to change my life. And he said, Jeffrey, if you don't do this, I will fucking kill you. Truth. That's a quote. I then went and got the job, and within a year, I ran development. And I learned something big because I was ready to stop acting. This wasn't love. I realized that the actors were the last hired and the first fired. And I thought, oh my God. And there are no facts here in movies and television, really. It's all opinions forcibly argued. And if you can express your opinion articulately and with force and belief, you can win this. You can do this. And I just loved it. I developed the X-Files. I was partnered with David Kelly, who's just a giant of a man and very kind and really talented. He'd write an episode in 2 days, all longhand on yellow legal pads.
Kind of old school. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think George Lucas did that kind of thing. He wrote Star Wars in all pencil on yellow pads,
Yeah.
if I remember rightly. Obviously, talking to David, obviously you worked with him on The Practice and Ally McBeal. Was it 2 Emmys that you
One
kind of
night
won?
we won both.
Both,
Best
right?
comedy,
Wow.
best drama. In the same year, I had my mother, my kids there. It was, what a night. I can only begin to tell you. It was very cool. I want one more, though. I have 3. I got to get 4. I can only resonate to equal numbers.
Yeah, no, that sounds good to me. Now, obviously, in The Practice was Dylan McDermott. He was the lead. And did I hear a story once that you kind of inspired him to become an actor, but you didn't realise that this happened until years later?
I saw Dylan at a dinner. We were trying to cast The Practice, and David
Yeah.
was looking at Oliver Platt, and then we looked at Beau Bridges. I think he saw it more as Everyman. And I went to a dinner at the AFI, and it was Clint Eastwood in The Line of Fire, I think it was. And Dylan was there, and I didn't know him. And I went up and I said, do you care anything about material? He said, it's everything in the world to me. I said, then you should read this pilot because it's so good, and I think it's you. And he said, give it to me, send it to my agents, and I promise you I'll read it. The agent calls, he says, look, he's a movie star. I said, yes, he just did Jersey Girls. What's he going to do, 49 more? New Mexico Girls, North Dakota Girls. So I said, he gave me his word he'd read it. And a week later after that, Dylan called and said, Jeffrey Kramer? I said, yeah. He said, I love this script. I said, I knew you would. He said, do you ever go into a bar called Jimmy Days in New York, over the subway in the Village and Sheridan Square? I said, yeah, you always get off the subway, stop in. He said, you remember Mac? I said, yeah, he's a bartender. He goes, that's my father. He said, you may not remember this because you were a little tipsy, but it was right after Jaws, and you came in, and we sat, and you sat and talked to me, who was this underage busboy, for a long time, and you inspired me. You really did. And he tells the press about this subsequently. And as I was going home from the dinner, and the phone call, I called my kids and I said, you know what? You got to put it out there in the world because you never know when it'll come back to you. And sure, it made him a star, and we're still great friends. And I know his kids, and wife, and just a great man.
He's still doing some great work on television.
And he got nominated again, too, this year for Hollywood.
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite program I've seen this year, actually.
Nice.
I think it's brilliant. Again, It's all about character.
Yeah.
So it's brilliant. Also, doing some research, in a recent podcast you did, I heard you say that you still take a lot of scripts home at the weekend. As a producer, what are you looking for in a script from people?
Well, it changes it all the time. We took out a script that I'd worked for 2 years on called Bitter Brew. It's a story of the Anheuser-Busch family. And we went to all the streamers, and it didn't sell. And, I should have realized, I think, that there were, after Succession, that most streamers have some family dynasty shows in development already. And, in this era, it's a very male-driven story. I mean, these people practice primogeniture. The firstborn inherited the company. And it is a deep period, and it's very tough to make nowadays. So, but there's more. I sent something to David Kelly the other day. I have a new book I just spoke to Howard Gordon and Alex Ganza about. So who knows? Sometimes you care more about certain ones than the others, but it's a miracle when things get made.
Yeah. I know, obviously, we've talked a lot about character and, both for film and for television. I know on the Daily Jaws, every so often, someone always says, I'm not going to talk about a Jaws remake, but people often say, Jaws might make a great TV series if it was called Amity Island and it was just about the people there. I'm not saying that it would be about redoing the events that happened in the film, but maybe if it was about before or post the events in the film, do you think that might work this isn't me pitching to you, by the way. Do you think that would work as a TV series?
Did you ever see a TV series called Northern Exposure?
Yeah.
Amity would be something like that. We did one in a small town for years that David Kelly created called Picket Fences.
I remember the Tom Skerritt.
Which was really good. Mm. But, then you really got to get stories that aren't just all personal stories. Otherwise, it's a little soap. And you got to get some either medical or legal or something in there that, takes some of the heavy lifting off of character.
Yeah. So obviously, I know I mentioned remake there, but just touching on it, because I know we before we kind of started recording.
I loved the remake. I thought it was so much fun. And I loved the way it inspired everybody. I mean, it shows you that the experience of watching Jaws is individual for everybody. They just think of it differently. Some people thought of it, cartoony. Some took the emotion of it. And it was just it was a brilliant conceit on your part. It was brilliantly conceptually done, and it was so much fun to watch. You got to give everybody. It made everybody a creator at home. It's
definitely,
cool.
and I think that was the perfect opportunity to do it. And as you said, people could get away with it looking a little bit ropey because obviously they were stuck in their houses. They had limited accessibility to stuff, but I think we just wanted to make sure that it didn't have to be something polished, and it needed to be something that everyone could take part in, whether you had just a phone or whether, as you say, animation or whatever.
You bet. It should be an annual, and you should have a contest. It would be great.
Oh no, what you're saying is up for Jeffrey. But no, that's great. And one other question I have to ask you: what was wrong with your printing?
I'm a lefty.
Maybe that was it. You kept on smudging it. When you were doing it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Let Polly do the printing. But those just came. They were kind of fun.
I think that's the Jaws. Just almost every line is kind of so quotable as well, isn't it? It's sort of
Well, Stephen was very good with that. You could, things you throw rocks at a window. It was all really a lot of fun. I mean, even when we're up in, I'm painting out the shark fin on the big sign. You don't see it really, but I remember I loved it because I was afraid of heights, and I would just play that, and I was, But you're forced to deal with yourself, and there are some where you can't divulge, you can't, if there's a pause in something, or you have to do things word specific and exact, some directors, and Stephen was not like that, and he really inspired you. Look, how I am so lucky to have done this. I'm part of something that I'm proud of. I met so many interesting people, and I continue to do so because the fans just give me hope for the future. I mean, it's very cool.
Kind of one of my final questions, and please tell me it's happening, but there's got to be a book in you about everything you've kind of done, the films and the TV, because it's just so varied. And even if Jaws wasn't part of it, you've just done so many wonderful things and worked on so many films and TV shows, both in front and behind.
It certainly was a circuitous route. I don't know if it has a book. I don't know if I could organize well enough. I'm not great at organization. It's right. Two of my boys and I have Tourette syndrome, and I became we raised a lot of money for it and did it on a lot of our shows. And organization is not my skill set, but it certainly has been a wild ride. And I remember in kindergarten learning. Somebody once said to me, and then. By the inch, life is a cinch. By the yard, exceedingly hard. And as long as you keep taking 3 steps forward and you take 2 back, that's progress. And as long as you don't stop moving and you're present wherever you are, you can't lose.
Wise words, definitely. So just tell us one more time, how can we get to sort of speak to you as part of your digital live event?
I would love it if everybody would come on August 22nd at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to Facebook or Instagram on fullempirepromotions.com and fullempirepromotions.com. And at 5 o'clock, we begin the select question, the select pictures and video chats and all of that. And I'm actually really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I went to Germany on a con once, and I was going to be in your turf in July, and it got canceled. And then there was going to be one in October or November, I think, that got canceled. But I want to come over and see my boys, and I'll visit with you, and
wow.
hopefully sooner than later.
Oh yeah, no, that would be great, definitely. Yeah, wow. No, that would be genuinely stunning. It's been amazing to kind of speak to you this evening, and I'm sure I speak for Jaws fans, film and TV fans everywhere. I want to say thank you ever so much for kind of talking to us today on the Daily Jaws. It's been a real honour and privilege. It really has.
And you touch me, and I thank you and thank you all, because I'm honored and I'm grateful, and I thank you.
Guys, thanks so much for watching. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing the video, subscribing to the channel and clicking those all important notifications. For more great Jaws content, visit thedailyjaws.com.